Charge it, put it down.
Did you get the
Yeah.
Can you bring it to the room?
Sure.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Don't.
Thank you. I want to thank you for taking this time to be a part of this this workshop, this learning process. This is really the beginning of what I sort of envision as a 2.5-year journey for you as parents and for you students. You have the half of this year where you're really starting to begin to think a little bit more specifically. You have next year with the application process, and then you have the year after that as you transition into your first year of college. And it's such an important, monumental 2.5 years, because you're really getting ready to make your first adult decision. But it's that is part of a journey, and it doesn't have to be. It can be stressful. It doesn't have to be. You've got some great counselors here who know this job extremely well, and they know their counterparts at colleges very well. It's a tremendous resource for you. I've been through this as a parent twice. Both my kids have now graduated from college, but I remember it was a learning process for me because I discovered something new about each of them, watching and sort of accompanying them at some time on their journey through these 2.5 years. Very quickly, since my kids grew up here until we moved to Tennessee in 2001. But when we were looking at colleges for my son, he wanted to come back to the Northeast. So we looked at a lot of colleges up in this area in New England. And we sort of thought, well, as his parents, my wife and I said, well, I think he'd really like this one, this one, this one. And typically we were wrong. We thought that, okay, he's going to really love this place. And we'd walk out, and I really don't like it. And we discovered there was a pattern that he really liked campuses that had sort of an identifiable common space, like a quadrangle. And if it didn't have a quadrangle, he didn't like it. And we sort of dug into that. Well, yeah, it makes sense. He grew up here. And for him, sort of a quadrangle represented community. My daughter really typically did not like a whole lot of drama, although she was often in the midst of it. She wanted to make sure that this was going to be a really easy decision. So she found a place, and she applied early decision, because she didn't want all the stress of sort of waiting on this one and that one and so forth. And she had her heart set on a particular college and did not get in for early decision. And her guidance counselor, college counselor at the time, gave her great advice. And he said, you can be upset for 48 hours, but on the 49th hour, you need to get back to work. And so we went through this whole process again. And with her, I discovered that she was far more resilient than I had sort of given her credit for. And it was a great discovery. And so it is a revealing process for everybody, but particularly, of course, for the students going through it. Because you're going to discover more about yourself, you're going to discover more about your aspirations, and you're going to have a much deeper sense of self-awareness, and that's a great thing. As I said, you've got some expert guides on this journey, and I advise you to lean into their expertise, because they will help this process be more informative, more enjoyable, and really more productive. And as part of this sort of beginning of this journey, the school for 20-something years has put together a senior leadership training program, which will begin in the spring of the junior year. And it involves leadership training, it involves outdoor education through low and high ropes course elements. And it really is a fabulous program. And Ralph Fideli is going to talk to you a little bit about what that program entails. But it is sort of designed to begin to allow the students to sharpen their focus by allowing them to discover more about themselves and their strengths.
As Bill said, the junior leadership program, Josh Collins and I run it. And it'll occur over about 6 weekends in the spring, and each boy will go for 1 weekend. We split them up in groups of 10 to 15, and we drive up to Indian Mountain School where the ropes course facility is at. And for 2 days we do various group problem-solving activities. The boys kind of work together and try and foster some effective communication, problem-solving, and so it's a fun 2 days. We stay overnight, and then on the second day we do some high ropes programming. But as Bill mentioned, it's part of the leadership program that we do with the juniors. Spring term, the seniors are kind of starting to look towards college, and so they turn the leadership responsibilities over to the junior class. And so when we're there, we talk a lot about becoming leaders at the school, whether you're going to become a prefect, proctor, dean assistant, captain of a team, or just being a senior. You're looked at as a leader on campus for the underclassmen or new students, or even for new faculty. So it's a great program. Part of the logistics is a parental permission slip that you should have gotten in your folder, and we just ask for you guys to fill that out for us, and it'll make the logistics kind of go smooth for us. But if you have any questions or concerns about the ropes course, you can always email me, and I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Oh, we have a question right now.
Yeah, last question. How does that fit in with spring sports?
So that's a good question. It's Sunday, all day Sunday, and then all day Monday. So they'll miss their Monday classes, and they'll usually be back for practice. If they have a game, sometimes lacrosse or baseball will have a game, we make sure that they get to those games. And if it is a conflict, we try and schedule the boys where that isn't a problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Bill. All right, it's time. It's time. I want to tell you, this is a bit of a sad day because both Mr. Hart and I have become very close to the seniors, and this is kind of the day where we say goodbye to the seniors. We've been through a lot with them over the last year, but on the flip side, it's an exciting day because this is the day we say hello to you guys, and now the junior class becomes our primary focus, starting literally tomorrow. In your packet, you will see that there is a information brag sheet, and that's also your ticket. What you need to do, this is for the students, you need to fill out that brag sheet, sign up on Mr. Hart or my door, depending on who you're working with, and bring that with you to have our first meeting. Not surprisingly, last year Charlie Czar had his filled out in this meeting and wanted to meet right after we let out. But there's always some eager beavers, that's good. So let's get those going, and then we will start the one-on-one meetings literally tomorrow. Sign up on our doors, and what we do in those one-on-one meetings, parents, is we're really trying to get an overview of what your son's objectives are, whether they're looking at small schools, mid-sized schools, large schools, and we will put together a preliminary list. The preliminary list is written in pencil, not in pen. You will get a copy of that list. I know a lot of parents are eager to jump right in and talk to both Mr. Hart or myself right now. I ask that you wait, see what happens with the preliminary list, and if you're like, where did these come from? No, we got to redo this. That's fine. But I think it's important to get the input from your son first, because he is the one who has to go on this journey. I do want to share a very funny thing that happened to me, and this is a good lesson about the importance of words. I got an email from a parent basically saying, my son doesn't want to go to junior college. He's looking at hopefully for 4-year college. When are you doing your 4-year college day? Fair enough, junior college day. Welcome to junior college day. We will be doing 4-year colleges today. I did tell the parent I was going to tell the story because I sat there and I thought that's actually pretty funny. But it's really important because we all need to be on the same page. And there's going to be some terms that are going to be used today that we just take for granted. We use these terms all the time, and for many of you, it's going to be first blush. Early decision is a word, 2 words you're going to hear a lot. Early decision is you want to apply to a school early, usually in November. Georgia Tech, October, but November. You will hear before Christmas, and if you are accepted, you're pretty well done. That's where you've agreed to go. Early action and early decision I like to equate, the guys will like this because you can figure it out, it's sort of like getting married. You're done. Early action in our world is the dating. You can date more than one person if you want, and that's early action. And you can throw out early action applications to numerous schools that have the early action program. You can actually have an early decision and some early actions. If you get in, you don't have to say yes until May, which is quite a nice privilege. You can go check out the school after you hear you got in, and you don't have to say yes, you're coming until May. So those are 2 terms that you're going to hear a lot, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I do want to introduce, well actually, I haven't met everybody here. I'm Slade Mead, and I run the college office, and I've met most of you, but if I haven't, I apologize for not introducing myself at the beginning. This is will be my 9th class that I've worked with here at Trinity-Pawling. I'm really lucky. I would argue that I've got one of the best teams out there. Scott Hart joined us this year. Talk about, it's like a duck taking the water. He gets it. I was a little nervous, I'll be honest, because we lost Nick Bell, who had 4 years under his belt. And it's tough to just step right in. Scott went out to a national conference and came back with like 400 business cards, and it was like, oh yeah, I met this guy, He probably knows more of these guys than I do now. I mean, this guy has done a great job. Scott will focus primarily on those of you who want to do college athletics. If you think you're going to be an athlete in college, you probably have been assigned to Scott. All of you have been assigned to one of us right now. Don't fret it. If you want to switch, you're welcome to switch. In fact, I think I lost more people to Scott than he lost to me this past year. I don't take it too personally. I also want to introduce Denise Palmer. Denise is unbelievable. Denise is the mother of 3 Trinity-Pawling graduates. She knows this school inside out. She is a fabulous resource. If you ever have a transcript question, you go to Denise Palmer. If you think that you might be eligible for accommodations on standardized tests, on the SATs or the ACTs, contact Denise Palmer. If you really have a question about the whole process and you can't get hold of Mr. Harper or myself, talk to Denise, bounce the question off her. She probably knows the answer. If not, she'll get in touch with one of us. She also is our meet and greet person for about 140 colleges that come and visit us every fall. And she's the best in the business, and we're really excited that she works in my office. Thank you. I also have, or we have, 18 other faculty members who work in the office. And this, a lot of people don't understand or realize. It's called the Dunham Committee, named after Bill Dunham, who's head of the English department. There's a very important document that our office produces, and it's called the Secondary School Report, SSR. These guys are nodding their heads. The SSR is the holistic letter. Who is this kid? What's he all about? What makes him tick? What's he like outside the classroom? Yeah, we got the teacher recs, but what's he like in the dorm? What's he like with his teammates? What's he like at the dining hall? This is all included in this SSR. Very important letter. Our SSRs, I would argue, and you can ask the panel and they could make me up be a liar, but I think our SSRs are second to none. And the reason is we do it very differently. We use the Dunham Committee. In late spring, this is going to make your son sound like a commodity, I apologize, but this is the way it works. In late spring, we have a draft. It's like rotisserie baseball. And we deal out the cards, and everybody gets their card. Okay, ace of spades, you get to go first, all the way down to the two of clubs. And what we're doing is we're drafting juniors who we want to write the SSR for because we've had them in the classroom, we've had them on the dorm, we've had them on the athletic field, we've had them in drama. We just know the kid really, really well. It works beautifully because then a teacher who knows your son really, really well is writing the foundational part of the SSR. What I mean by the foundational part is they then send it to me or to Harf, or Mr. Harf. We check it against the file. So if you were in a play and the SSR doesn't mention your theater background, don't worry, it will get into the letter. That's my job, to make sure we haven't missed anything. But for the most part, our letters read where the colleges are like, how the hell do you know these kids so well? Well, the truth is I don't know them that well, but their soccer coach who lives on the dorm with them and has them in math, yeah, he knows them really, really well. And we say at the top that this was written by somebody from the Dunham Committee. I want to shift gears for a second. Parents, I hate to tell you this, but this might be the first time you've encountered a situation where you can't fix a problem for your kid. For example, if you miss the deadline to apply to a UC school in California, you missed it. God can't get an application into the UC system because they turn the system off at 12:01 Pacific time on December 1st. You cannot apply to UC late. You can call the governor of California if you want. You can call the head region, and they'll say, great, take a gap year, try us next year. And it's very frustrating for some parents because they're used to being able to jump in and solve the problem for Johnny. So it's very important that the kids realize and the parents realize deadlines are really important in this business. So it's imperative that we're all on the same page. The second thing, parents, and Bill Taylor alluded to this, I promise you, 95% of you, if you go touring with your kids, you're going to have a moment where you're willing to pull a gun on your son. It's going to happen. I took my daughter around, and it was in the Hamilton parking lot. I don't know if any of you have ever driven to Hamilton, but it's like 8 million miles north. We get there, she won't get out of the car. What do you mean you won't get out of the car, Sierra? Get out of the car. I like, get out of the car. She goes, no, there are too many trees. You can't reason with a teenager who has dug his heels in. It's going to happen. You can call me like a bartender if you want and say, oh God, you should see what just happened up at Colgate. Oh my Lord. It's going to happen, parents. Take a deep breath and say, you know what, I can't stand trees either, let's move on. I hate trees. Oh, what were they thinking with all those trees? The second thing I want to give you guys, parents, You're going to go visit a college, and your son may fall in love with the school because the tour guide is gorgeous. Or you may hate the school because the tour guide is an idiot. Here's what I want you to do. If it's the former, the gorgeous tour guide, that's fine. But after the tour, when he's really hyped up about the school and Julie, who just showed him around the campus, take a walk without the tour guide. Take an extra 15 minutes to just sort of walk around. Conversely, if you are on the tour of hell, and they're out there, my daughter and I flew out to see Claremont McKenna. I knew within 30 seconds that I'd wasted an airplane ticket because of the tour guide. So I was like, Sierra, hey, let's duck out. Like 4 other families went with us. So we did our own tour. It salvaged the trip. If you know your tour guide is poison, punt. Cut the cord. Escape. Get out. You name it. And it's just, it's chemistry. Don't stay on a 2-hour, an hour-and-a-half tour with somebody who you just know is killing the experience. This is perfect. I got 2 minutes. I want to talk quickly about the essay, and then I'm going to ask Chris Doyle, who's the director of admissions at Marist, to speak. The question I get a lot is, how important is this essay? There's a lot of angst about the essay. The essay, it's important. It's a chance for the school to see into your life. Who are you? What makes you tick? But it's got to be well written. Most of you, if not all of you, are going to start the essay in English class this spring. I am begging you, please bounce the essay off Mr. Hart for me. We'll help you with it. We'll help point you in the direction. There's some essays you want to avoid. God, Harry Potter, they don't care you love Harry Potter. The athlete who broke his ankle and came back heroically and won the game, the final shot, who cares? That's not a picture of you, that's a snapshot in time of one thing. It's got to be broader. And I think, students, you'll be amazed what amazing essays you can write if you put in the work. I'm going to read an essay, and then I'm going to segue over to our friend from Marist, to Chris Doyle. This is an essay written by a student a few years ago. And I want you to think about what he's doing to you as a reader, and then ask yourself, do you want to meet this kid? Because if you want to meet him, how do you meet him? You accept him. You don't want the pity essay. You want the essay where the reader's like, I want to meet this kid. How am I going to do it? I'm going to send an acceptance letter, and hopefully he's going to come to my school. This is written by Todd Kirkpatrick. He knows I read this every year. Before 3 weeks ago, this essay was going to be about my grandfather, a man whom I love and admire. Bill is a 4-star general in the Air Force. Okay, kind of interesting. And growing up with him has given me an arsenal of many great stories. I like the arsenal with the general, that's good. That would have been adequate for this essay. But 3 weeks ago, something happened that will change my life forever and takes this essay from adequate to something incredible. Well, actually, I don't think we have time to read it. Now, right now, you're like, no, what's going on here? 4-star general wasn't enough? I want to hear what's going on. Let me set the scene. Now, students, I think you'll buy into this. It was an average Wednesday night. My homework was done. Although I should have gone to sleep, I was wide awake and bored. I decided to do some internet browsing. Let me tell you, you do not know the definition of bored until you've attended an all-boys boarding school. Okay, a little humor there. There's absolutely nothing to do after 8 o'clock at night. Anyway, I'm going to date this guy. I decided to check MySpace. That's an old, like, Facebook thing. It's not really around anymore. Now, I'm an admitted Facebook addict who gave up MySpace long ago, but on this Wednesday night, I decided to check it. Maybe it was fate, maybe coincidence, who knows. I logged on. There was a friend request, in quotes, from a 14-year-old girl from San Jose, California. I found this kind of weird, but I shrugged it off and just assumed it was another girl who had fallen in love with my profile picture. Since the guy's got a good sense of humor. Since this does not happen often, I probably should have assumed something else, but sometimes our ego gets the best of us. I clicked accept and thought nothing else about it. About 30 minutes later, I refreshed the page and had one new message. The message was from this 14-year-old girl whom I had just accepted as a friend. The message read, quote, "Hey, can I talk to you?" Unquote. I found this a little strange, but again, did not think anything of it. After all, she's in California, and I'm in a dorm somewhere in rural New York. I replied, "Sure, what's up?" When she replied, my life changed forever. But we're running a couple minutes late, so I'm not going to finish it. Now you want to know what happened. He's got you. He's got you. This essay's got you. What happened? A message came across my screen reading, "Were you by any chance adopted from San Luis Obispo, California in 1990? My sirens were going off. I still had no clue what was going on, but my mind was sure guessing. I immediately replied, yes, I was. Who are you? How do you know that? For the next 20 minutes, my heart was pounding as my mind guessed what could possibly be going on. I refreshed the page every 30 seconds in anticipation of her answer. Then it finally came. The message simply said, "I'm your sister." This happened in Owen's house, by the way. This was a huge surprise to me. My whole life I've been an only child who was adopted from California, living in Alabama. He's giving a lot of biographical details here through the back door. You're learning about this guy. My adopted parents, as far as I'm concerned, have been my only immediate family members. I've never thought to look for my birth parents or considered that I have any siblings. I was excited. This part was pretty funny. I was excited. I jumped up to my desk and ran around the dorm screaming that I had a sister. My dorm mates were not as excited about being pulled out of bed as I was about finding her, but I did not care. I had to tell someone. He woke up, not only Owen, I think he went next door, woke up the other dorm too. Ever since that night, I've been talking to her constantly. We immediately became best friends. Even though we have not yet met in person, if you saw us together, it would seem like we've grown up together, not separated for 14 years. Since this amazing discovery, I've been asked by everyone from my best friend and my grandmother what I think about finding my biological sister. Before I can answer that question, I have to do some deep thinking. First, I'm in total shock to find out that there's another person in this world that not only shares my blood and genetic makeup and has a physical appearance similar to myself, but one who's been adopted since birth as well. Then when I get over the shock, I become extremely excited. Excited because I, Todd Kirkpatrick, have a little sister. I love the idea of getting to be the cool older brother who's always there for his sister. Mandy just started high school, and I know that my experiences can only help get through these next 4 years. 2009 is turning out to be an amazing year. A year ago, I never envisioned myself taking a postgraduate year somewhere in rural New York. Nor did I ever think I would be applying to Sewanee, one of the premier colleges in the world. The real amazing thing, however, is there will be a young high school girl in California telling her friends, "Yeah, my brother plays basketball at Sewanee. That's where I want to go to college too. You know, family has to stick together." Sewanee called me. Todd had no right getting into Sewanee academically. He really didn't. His grades weren't all that good. He was a pretty good basketball player. They called me from the admissions office, the committee meeting, put me on speakerphone, and they were clapping. They're like, we want this guy. We want to meet this guy. So does the essay matter? Yeah. Will it be that changing moment? Probably not. But can it make a difference? It sure can. It sure can. So guys, work with us. Let's build these essays together. It's not a one draft deal. It's a back and forth. Let's make sure it works right. But we will walk you through the system. I'm going to get Chris Doyle up here to say a few words. Then we're going to have a panel discussion, and there's going to be a lot of information. Most of the information is in that packet that you received. I'm also going to send you that packet by PDF, so you'll have it at home as well. But with that, I want to introduce Chris, who has been a tremendous resource for us. We work together a lot. Chris is the Director of Admissions at Marist and has come to TP every year for the last 8 years, quite a while, and we've done a lot of work together. But I appreciate you being here, especially since you guys are kind of still on vacation. So, Chris Doyle, Director of Admissions. You. Go ahead.
All right, so how's everyone?
Good.
I'm great, thanks for asking. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. So as Slade said, my name is Chris Doyle. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission at Marist College, which is less than an hour from here, right on the Hudson River, not too far from the other college in Poughkeepsie. I've worked at Marist since 2006. I had a short hiatus when I went to work for Johns Hopkins University down in Baltimore, Maryland, and then returned to Marist a year later, where I took on a new position. I had always started in undergraduate admission, focused on students who are coming directly from high schools. And when I returned to Marist, I actually spent the year working with adult students. And so for Marist, that's students who come into the college 22 years of age or older. And a year later, I then transitioned and began working with transfer students. So students who are coming from four-year colleges and students who were transferring from junior colleges, two-year schools, from around the country. And then I transitioned back to the undergraduate side, where I'm now leading a team of admission counselors who are, again, focused on undergraduate students coming from high schools. And I think during that time, I've learned a lot about college admissions, and I've really seen the field evolve in terms of systems and processes and the way that we are building our applicant pools and enrolling our class. And I've also seen on the high school side a change in tools and resources that are available to them and the information that is available to them to help you navigate this process. Throughout that time, I've definitely seen from the family side much more stress and anxiety about this process, which for most of you is really, I understand it's personal, it's you going through the process, but really you don't need to be so stressed and anxious and having sleepless nights and things like that as you go through the majority of this process. I mean, there's no doubt that there will be stress involved, but I think for you and the position that you're in and the resources that you have here at TP, that stress is absolutely, or should be, a lot less than what I think some of your peers will probably go to. So for me, one of the things that I really want to talk about today, really the theme of what I want to talk about, is that you are not average in terms of people going to college and the college landscape. And that landscape is pretty complex. So when you think about colleges and universities and the students that they serve, they are serving a wide breadth of students, from doctorate and graduate students to those transfer students I talked about, and those adult students that are out there, as well as the students who are coming directly from the high school, which I think will surprise you in a little bit to find out how few of those students are actually out there. So I don't think we have any PG students here today, is that correct? Okay. So for most of you, let me start with actually asking you, how many are going through this process for the first time? You're the first in the family to go through the college application process of your siblings. What am I by? I'm older now, so I can't see that. All right, great. And then how many of you have had a sibling already go through the process? And how many of you are the last of your siblings to go through the process? You can tell before you put your hands up because all of your parents are smiling. They're pretty happy about that. So, for many of you, this is the first time that you will go through this process. And as some of you have shown, you've had siblings that have gone through it, so you probably have benefited from some college information sessions and tours that you might have accompanied them on. But this time around, it's different because it's really all about you, and the focus will be on you. So you'll need to figure out, what college or university is the right fit for you. And you'll have to figure out what does fit mean for you. So for some students, fit will be academics, will be athletics, financial aid, service opportunities, social experiences, research, travel abroad. And for some of you, it might be all of the above. Those are things that you're really interested in. We're really fortunate in this country that we have the most diverse system of higher education found anywhere in the world. There's a major out there for everyone. Right? There's an abundance of choice in terms of majors, in terms of campuses, in terms of campus cultures, locations, co-curricular activities, whether you're in a rural setting, an urban setting, or somewhere in between. There's just enormous choice within this country. I think one of the downsides to the college admission process in this country is that the national conversation tends to focus on the really highly selective side of it, which is not average. That's a small group of students in the country. And we're entering a time of the year over the next few months that will really be the peak of the college admission season, which means it's time again for a flood of stories that will really misrepresent what higher education looks like for most American students. And it will really skew the public debate over everything from student debt to the purpose of college in the process. So think about these headlines. These are headlines from just the past year. College admissions has turned into something akin to the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games. Have you seen the Hunger Games? What happens in that? That's the Washington Post. What colleges want in an applicant? Everything. That's the New York Times. That's still up on their website as of this morning. Use rejection to prepare teens for college, advised the Huffington Post. This is pretty ominous, right? This is skewing the reality of what's out there. So the national conversation usually depicts the admission process like this, and for some of you, this will be true. You'll go through this process. High school seniors spend months visiting colleges, writing essays, wrangling letters of recommendation, and practicing taking and retaking an alphabet soup of ACTs, SATs, and AP exams. Then the really hard part, months of nervously waiting to find out if they're among the lucky few. Fewer every year, we're told, with the right blend of academic achievement, extracurricular involvement, and odds-defying personal story to gain admission to their favorite university. Here's the reality. And again, this is talking about what's happening in the landscape that's out there. Most students actually never write a college entrance essay, those who are attending as undergrads. They never pad a resume or sweet talk a potential letter writer, nor are most, as The Atlantic says, obsessively checking their mailboxes. Forget the fact that many are electronically sent now for decisions. According to data from the Department of Education, more than 3/4 of U.S. undergraduates attend colleges that accept at least half of their applicants. 75% of undergraduates, that's a huge number, attend colleges that accept more than half of the applicants that they receive. Just 4% attend schools that accept 25% or less, and hardly any, well under 1%, attend schools like Harvard and Yale that accept less than 10%. Those are pretty staggering numbers, right? And really cause you to take a deep breath, step back, and realize that there is light at the end of this tunnel. It shouldn't be as scary as I think what it's put out there to be. The misconceptions, though, they don't end with admission. When you think about college and that word and that experience, the national conversation seems to mean people in their late teens and early 20s living in dorms, going to parties, studying English, maybe pre-med, bio, and emerging 4 years later with a degree and an unpaid internship. The reality, though, is that that's not truly representative and is increasingly disconnected from reality, that nearly half of college students attend community colleges. Among those at four-year schools, nearly a quarter attend part-time, and about the same share are 25 years of age or older. That's at four-year schools where you're headed. When you think about the students who are being served by these institutions and the people who will be in the same classrooms as you at many colleges and universities, right? That's something to definitely be aware of. In total, less than a third of U.S. undergraduates are traditional students, students in the sense that they're full-time, degree-seeking students at primarily residential four-year colleges. When you think about these articles and places like The Atlantic, The New York Times, The Washington Post, you know, many of their constituents probably have attended selected universities or have children that they wish will attend those institutions. And so it's not out of the realm or unusual that they would write to kind of cater to their audience. But this is information that's out there that everybody might be coming across at one point or another through a friend of a friend who read it. And so it feeds into that national conversation and that narrative, which I think ratchets up that stress and anxiety, which is really unnecessary. There's a writer, Jeff Salingo, who writes and focuses on higher education. And what he has said, and he focuses on kind of the broader group of students, is that this kind of narrative is exactly the opposite of the experience for the bulk of American students. It's not just newsrooms, though Hollywood does the same thing. So if you think, everybody here think of a movie that has to do with college. Everyone have one? It could be Animal House, it could be something more contemporary. But think about that movie. And most likely that movie is taking place on a leafy college campus, right? In fact, the writers of Pixar's film Monsters University, when they wanted a model for their animated campus, they visited Harvard, MIT, and Berkeley. Right? According to Salingo, one result of this is that we view higher education through the eyes of highly selective private higher education, even though 95% of U.S. undergraduates attend the other colleges and universities. So that myopia has real consequences when you think about education, education policy. Based on these accounts, it would be easy to think that the biggest issues on U.S. campuses today are things like trigger warnings. That's where professors have to give students warnings if they're going to talk about something that might upset them or might be controversial. The rise of hookup culture, the spiraling cost of fancy dorms and fancy rec centers, although, to be fair, there's some merit to the last one. There's a school out there that literally has a lazy river, which I would love, but I can understand why that's a topic of conversation. Meanwhile, issues that matter to the large share of students get short-shrift. The focus on elite schools really draws away from issues that matter to the majority of families. Consider the breathless coverage of the college application game that few students ever play. For most students, or at least most high school graduates, getting into college is not nearly as big a challenge as getting out. Barely half of first-time, full-time bachelor's degree students graduate within 6 years. For part-time or community college students, that share is even lower. It took years in education reporting for things like college completion to actually become mainstream topics and focuses. And perhaps some would argue that's because at selective schools, college completion rates are much higher than the schools that the average student would attend. Even issues that do get attention, such as student debt, are often covered through the lens of elite institutions. National coverage is unable to resist stories of students with eye-popping debt loads in the 6 figures, but many of those stories involve people who went to graduate school who, not all, but many will end up making good salaries in the long term. And those who are struggling most to pay off loans are often those with smaller balances who either have degrees that don't help them find jobs, oftentimes not from for-profit institutions, or who never got a degree in the first place. This is a staggering statistic. Nearly 1 in 5 Americans aged 25 to 34 has some college credit, but no degree. And they oftentimes have taken on debt to earn those credits. Sociology professors and education policy experts, namely at the University of Wisconsin, say that the biggest issue is that people can't afford to spend enough time in college to actually finish their degrees. The national conversation fails to understand this and how tenuous a grasp many students have on college. They're working while in school, juggling multiple jobs, they don't readily align with class schedules, and they're attending part-time, which makes it take longer to graduate and reduces the chances of them finishing at all. And they're raising children, supporting parents, and taking on debt as they go along. One little thing for these students falls apart, and it's a drastic consequences, and they're pretty severe. Students keep taking that risk for a reason, though. a college degree remains the most likely path to a decent paying job and prosperity in this country. The statistics are really undeniable when it comes to that. And the majority of students, contrary to the national conversation, are not studying philosophy or obscure majors. The most common majors are, right now, business and health-related fields. Yet the public debate over whether college is worth it and the related conversation over how to make higher education more affordable too often focuses on issues that are far removed from the lives of most students, lost in those discussions of the challenges that affect far more students. How to design college schedules to accommodate students who work, as more than half of students do. How to make sure students keep their credits when they transfer, as more than a third of students do at least one time. A third of students transfer at least one time before they complete an undergraduate degree. And of course, how to make college affordable, not just for the few who attend Harvard and the Ivies and the highly selectives, or for the many who attend less selective private schools, regional public universities, and community colleges. So as you begin this process, this college search, remember to focus on really what's right for you, and to think critically about the information that you're exposed to and that you're receiving, especially if it's coming from friends of a friend or third parties. And really take advantage of the excellent resources that are afforded to you here at TP. Finding the right college fit is challenging. There will be stress involved, but it's not impossible, especially with your college counseling staff here. I've had the pleasure, as Mr. Mead said earlier, of knowing Mr. Mead and his team for 8 years, and I can assure you that they will be your strongest advocate and your best advisor as you go through this process to find that college that is, in fact, the right fit for you. So thank you very much. I realize I'm standing between you, warm beverages, and cookies, and I don't want to be in that position much longer. So thank you, and please include Marist as you go through the college search. All right, thanks a lot.
Let's take a 15-minute break and come back here at about 3:15. Grab something to eat, something to drink, and then we're going to do a panel discussion and get into the more nuts and bolts of stuff.
Yes, I'll see.
你在烟干嘛？
I mean, his first education was for the help. Yeah. And obviously, this was smart enough to think this one came with the help.
I honestly don't know. The reason we have to sit there we don't really split it over.
Try calling Sean based on Massachusetts.
But she started.
We're at Dougie's college. I left a hot place out there.
You have red waters out there.
So we'll be.
Oh, that's fine.
But we'll also,
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Oh, okay. Slade, nice to meet you. Happy New Year to you.
but even if she doesn't say.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No, it's an interest.
It's where,
Well, I saw, I took the training here. I'm assuming you get a bag of some Trinity-Pawling. So, I'm assuming it's a student. I took the train from Grand Central up here, and then I took the cab.
like Shane.
It's okay.
I'll get you a right back.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, I already, there's a train in there. Okay. Oh, great. Yeah, I saw him.
Right, well, and that's what I've been doing.
Okay.
You asked me, but my, this, and I have to sleep at night. Right. Oh, no, that's exactly. That's the discussion we'll have.
Yeah, no, that's a great opportunity.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
Right, and we have, there's another one in.
Okay, good, yeah. Yeah.
When, had a health.
Hey, that's what your job is, right? That's what you're supposed to
You did have one that you referred to. The way I explained it, the hockey guys were a little different this season. Working better, but football, it doesn't work well. So football,
Yeah, it's a lot. It can do any, right, no, no, no.
no, I think that's, yes, that is, no, I think that's meant it's July.
It's not encouraging, but you can keep that between us. Well, I mean, it's pretty much. No, I mean, you can hold back 2 years. Sure, just get justice for that.
Well, we're not the best.
I knew day one, none of us are doing anything until we come back.
So I know that.
Right, yeah, and in some. Well, I'm looking forward to there. And I don't really think I'm looking in this area, but I can pass along. I do the city, Long Island, and Norwalk, yeah, no, it's true. Mackenzie. Art, very nice to meet you.
We're not.
Yes,
I like it.
yes, that'd be great. Looking forward to graduating.
We fell off the road.
I can do it. He was like, oh, you can do it. Percentage down the road? No, he didn't get off. Success because he didn't break anything. No problem. Thank you. I'm not doing that again. You know, he called me. Not surprised. He's just lucky that he called me when he did. Manager, I get self-service in like this very small spot. Some guy wrote his He's like, there's like a jump that like people did. It's just like you're laying in
What has it been in previous years?
That's kind of gross. You're not doing any tricks.
No, you're like 3 8. I email them every single week.
Could be enough. We missing our I'll move down.
All right, so we're going to start the panel portion here. We're going to go for about an hour. And I guess, first of all, I just want to thank our 3 guests here for joining us and taking time out of their day to come and talk about what it's like on their side of the table. Directly to my left, we have Art Rodriguez, who's the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Vassar College, which is in Poughkeepsie. Next to him is Mackenzie Kirsch, who's an admissions counselor at Penn State. And then you've already heard from Chris Doyle. But before we start, I just wanted to give Art and Mackenzie a quick second to introduce themselves. So, Art, do you mind?
Go ahead. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. Can you guys hear me? I'm bad with microphones. Yep, we're good. Okay, I speak pretty loudly, so hopefully you can hear me. Like I said, my name is Mackenzie. I'm very happy to be with you all and excited to talk to you a little bit about Penn State and your college adventure. I am a recent graduate of Penn State. I just graduated in May, So if you guys have any questions about student life specifically at Penn State or anything, I'm really happy to answer anything about that and looking forward to the next hour.
Hi everyone, my name is Art Rodriguez again. And so I'm currently at Vassar College as the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid. And this is the start of my 4th year. But prior to moving out to the East Coast, I was out in California in much warmer weather. And I was the Director of Admission at Pomona College, one of the Claremont colleges. And then even prior to that, I was in the Midwest, in a much colder state, in Minnesota at Carleton College. And there I was in student affairs and was Director of Multicultural Affairs. And so really have a strong interest in the small liberal arts colleges environment. And so happy to talk about my former institutions in positive ways if I can, but also talk about Vassar and the small college admissions process and anything I can share.
Thanks, guys. So we're gonna run this session with a just a regular question and answer format. So any questions from parents, from students, feel free to raise your hand and we'll take those first. And I have a set right here that we can start with, but if there's any questions right away, feel free to, you can open up to that. All right.
Oh, brave soul, come on, this is your moment.
Art, do you want to just start by outlining elements that go into a typical application?
Yeah. So this might vary a little bit, as I've just learned from Vassar and Penn State, and so we'll all have an opportunity to really answer this question. You know, but I think that the thing to realize is that this process is a complicated process, and that the things that are part of an application really are multi-layered, and there are going to be lots of pieces of the application that you're going to have to make sure is submitted to us. And they all tell us a wide range of different things about who you are as a student, what are some of the things that you are interested in academically, what are some of the things that you're also interested in when it comes to the social environment that you might be looking for at an institution. And so there's a reason for all these different pieces of the application that we asked you to submit. But let's start with sort of the basics. The basic pieces are the application itself. Institutions many use the Common Application. Some institutions also use the Coalition Application. You might also hear about the QuestBridge application. You may even hear about state applications to state institutions. And then there are a handful of schools that also have their own independent application that you might be using to apply to an institution. Regardless of what application you're using, there are some key components that are going to have to be submitted in addition to that. You're going to have to submit your high school transcript. That's going to be true of many institutions. What are the courses you've taken? What are the grades that you received in them? And we're trying to understand sort of your past trajectory when it comes to your academic progression at the college. A school might also ask for test scores, standardized test scores. And this will vary. You might hear that some schools are test optional, where you can submit test scores or maybe not. You also have some schools that don't ask for test scores at all as part of the process. So it's something that you want to just be mindful of as you're applying to institutions. Do they require test scores, such as the SAT or the ACT, and or both? And what do I need to submit to these institutions in order to be considered for admission? A key piece that was talked about earlier was the essay. The essay tells us something about you as a student. What are the things that you're interested in? What are you hoping to sort of convey to the college about getting a sense of you as a student, as a person, going through this process and the way that you reflected on the process and what that might mean for the institution. And so coming back to Mr. Mead's point of us wanting to meet you, that essay is a way to sort of introduce yourself, that we want to be interested and excited about meeting you through the process. There are also teacher recommendations and secondary school reports that was alluded to earlier. And so here the process is that there is a committee process by which recommendation letters are written by the college counseling office, and then you have your individual teacher recommendation letters. These letters tell us more about your academic side, your interest, how you connect with the rest of the high school environment. And those are sort of pieces that are important to the process, because not only are we interested in you as a student academically, we're also interested in the type of impact that you might have on the campus once you arrive. So the social interactions, the types of activities that you choose to be a part of also play some role in the process. You might also have an interview that you conduct on campus with an admissions officer, with an alumni interviewer, and that might be another part of the application that is considered in the discussion during committee about who a student is, what their interests are, and how an institution might see that fit from our perspective about whether or not you're a great fit for our institution. We also are factoring in other things like, are you a legacy? Has one of your parents attended our institution? You have a sibling at our institution, you have a grandparent, other family members who attended the college, and that may play some role in the process as well, depending on how much an institution puts into consideration that legacy connection of some sort. And then another part of the application that may come into play that we haven't really talked about today, but ties into the conversation that maybe some of you attended earlier when it comes to the financial aid part, is that some schools do consider applications from students who might be full-pay students in ways that if you have the ability to pay to attend an institution, that might serve in your favor in the admissions process, particularly if the school is trying to balance their budget in some way. So that might be a factor that comes into the conversation. It's usually not the first thing that comes into the conversation. The academic piece is the first thing, but these are sort of other components that might be a part of the conversation. And then I'll add to the conversation too something that has been alluded to, but we haven't touched on, is something called demonstrated interest. Institutions might talk about demonstrated interest and whether you as an applicant have shown some interest in the institution based on a variety of different ways to do that. Did you request an interview? Did you go to a school visit? Did you attend my booth at a college fair? Did you happen to meet the admissions officer when they came to visit the campus? These are other factors that are part of the process. And so this is just a list of all the different things that come into play in the application process, and we can go dig into them a little bit more. But I think that what it points to is the fact that there's lots of different factors that are being considered when we think about the admissions process. And all these different components make up some part of that. And what weighs heavily will differ from institution to institution. But I would say for most institutions, the academic component, how well you've done in high school, what that says about your ability to be successful in college, what your success might look like in terms of graduating our institutions, is going to be a really large part of the conversation as well. And so I think with that, that provides lots of pieces to talk about, and I'll let some of my colleagues maybe share some other thoughts on the application.
Sure. So obviously, Penn State and a lot of other bigger schools, they might do their application process a little bit differently. I mean, we're getting, Penn State at least is getting upwards of 50, 60, 70,000 applications a year. So to say that we request multiple essays, multiple letters of recommendations, just, it's not possible to read all of those. So bigger schools' applications tend to be not as holistic we would like to be. We have to, once again, be realistic. So specifically to Penn State, our application is pretty straightforward. We don't require any extra essays. We don't require any letter of recommendations, anything like that. We do have a personal statement, which, like Art was saying, that's a great way to introduce you to us. We want to be able to get to know you as much as we can, as opposed to just what grades you got in high school or what you got on your SAT or ACTs. Numbers can only tell us so much about you. We want to know about you as a person, what you got involved with. And I know sometimes there's kind of a misconception that at big universities, it's just kind of numbers. That's all they look at. It's really just, did you do well in high school? Did you do well on your standardized tests? And I know this is my first year as an admissions counselor for Penn State, and I quickly realized that is not how it happens. I mean, we do fully review applications. Like Art was saying, we like to see that you introduce yourself. So don't just think that if you have good grades or anything like that, or if you have bad grades, that big schools don't pay attention to who you are as a person. I will say too that Penn State, as we are a state school, sometimes a lot of people also think that as you guys would be out of state in New York, that we need to meet a certain requirement of in-state students, that we're state mandated to meet a certain percentage of Pennsylvania students, and that's also not true for Penn State. So there's really no academic edge that Pennsylvanian students get as opposed to New York students or California students, Florida students, anywhere that you all are from. And so that's another positive thing that is nice about Penn State that I also learned that I enjoyed. I mean, as far as application process, it's pretty much straightforward with ours, and it's nice that you don't have to worry about any letter of recommendations, at least for us. I'll let Chris go through.
I think that's a pretty comprehensive review of the application process in a nutshell.
Can I interject 2 thoughts? Demonstrated interest is fascinating, especially the smaller the school. If you visit a school, for the love of God, sign in and fill out the little form. Nothing is more painful to hear that you drove to Hamilton and my daughter never filled out the card. That little card counts as a plus mark that you visited. The second thing about demonstrated interest is these schools still use something called email. It's an old-fashioned communication device. I made a call last year to Case Western Reserve, kind of begging, and they said, well, we've sent 7 emails and none of them have been opened. That is a huge problem. If they're going to choose to communicate by email, you got to play their game and communicate by email. Conversely, I made a call 2 days ago, whatever before the holiday, to a school, and they said, oh, we sent an email out to ACT. Oh, he already opened it. And he opened it within an hour. And boy, I jumped through that. Yes, he opened it, but he's dying to go there. Demonstrated interest. It comes into play. And then lastly, mom doesn't count. Her responding to the email, her returning the phone call, don't do it. It's you. They want to talk to you. And Mr. Harp and I may be the bad guy once in a while saying, you need to contact Mr. Doyle. And you're like, well, why don't you contact Mr. Doyle? That's your job. Mr. Doyle wants to meet you, not me. Okay? It's demonstrated interest by the student. And you got to be Johnny on the spot if there's email communication.
Just one interjection here that we haven't talked about yet. So Mr. Mead and I use Naviance, and then on your guys' end it would be called Family Connection. It's this awesome program that helps our side of the desk send lots and lots of information to that side of the desk, and then the parents and the students can all see when we meet, hopefully tomorrow or this week, see that list that we're starting to build. And then all your transcripts will get sent out through that. Teacher recs and the SSR get sent out through that. So gone are the days of what I had to do, where I gave every teacher I asked to write a recommendation in a nice pre-addressed and pre-stamped envelope. So that's all housed out in cyberspace, and we'll send that out for the kids. And they should all have. We sound passionate.
Yeah, everybody's got their username and password.
Chris, do you want to? We already kind of touched on the test optional piece. Do you want to talk about that, please?
Yeah, so there are a lot of colleges and universities now, I think it's close to 900, that are test optional. And there's a variety of different test optionals. So there are some that are test flexible, and there are others that are test optional. It can be somewhat convoluted, and so you will have to do your research to figure out, what's required of each school. But there is a great site out there, it's called fairtest.org, that has a list of all of the colleges and universities that have some form of test flexibility. At Marist, we are truly test optional. So when a student applies, they can check yes or no, whether they want their test scores considered or not. And so if they check no, we review the application as is. We don't need anything additional. They don't have to come in for an interview, no graded papers sent, anything like that. We just go with what we have. And then for students who say yes, then those students will have to submit the test scores, and we will consider those scores in the review process. So for some students, the test scores can help them, right? So if their test scores are really good, it might demonstrate their capacity to perform well at the college or the university that they're going to. And it may show that, let's say if there's a blemish on a transcript, it may show that the potential was there and that was a reason for the stumble that they had in a particular year or subject as they went through high school. But it can definitely count against them if a student sends in scores that are not very strong in the context of the school that they're applying to. It can absolutely, hurt them in that process. So for us, when we look at who's applying and who's not, we have about 24% of our students who are not submitting test scores, and the rest are. And when we look at who's being offered admission, there's less than 1% difference between the two populations of who's being offered admission. So for us, in the way that we've changed our evaluation system over the past 10 years when we went test optional, we chose to really de-emphasize those test scores. And part of that is students will self-select out of the admission process because they'll look at test scores on a website and they'll just assume automatically they don't have any opportunity at all at that college or university. When the truth is, very different in a lot of cases. So for those students that don't want to submit, now they have the option to do that. What it also does is it allows students who traditionally will score lower, so students who are racially or ethnically diverse will typically score lower on standardized test scores than their Caucasian peers. And so as we evaluate applications, it encourages more of those students to actually look at selected four-year colleges and universities as an option for their education, so it encourages that as well. But there are different varieties, as I said, so you do have to spend some time looking into what's required in place of a test score if a school is requiring something additional. As I said at Marist, you simply check yes or no and then you move forward.
Test optional, if you think this might be your avenue, do yourself a favor. Start collecting graded writing samples, because a lot of test optional schools will require you to scan in at least 2 papers and send them in lieu of the test. And they have to be graded. And nothing's more frustrating than to find a kid say, oh, I throw all my stuff away. Well, don't. If you get a good grade on paper, scan it, then throw it away. But hold on to a good paper. It could come back and be very, very valuable.
The other movement that's happening within test scores and test optional institutions, a lot of colleges and universities are now moving towards allowing students to self-report their test scores. And there's a lot of reasons why that we can get into, but it's a good thing that students will be able to do that and they won't have to wait for the testing organizations to actually send those scores. So it really is a plus for the students and it's a plus for colleges and universities because it means your application will now be complete rather than us waiting for that latest test score and your application sits there incomplete without a decision.
Do you guys all super score, or can somebody explain what that is?
So do we all super score?
Yes.
Penn State requires the essay if you take the SAT.
No, it's just the reading and the math for the
Then you
SATs.
change that.
Yeah,
You
that's
used to
new.
be the essay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So let me just describe super scoring. So when it comes to submitting test results, SAT or ACT, schools that super score are essentially taking the highest score from multiple sittings and giving you credit for that. So if you say took the SAT 3 times and in one exam scored high on the evidence-based reading and writing, and then the second time you scored higher on the math section, then you took it again, and then you scored even higher on the math section the third time, we're going to give you credit for having that really high score in the evidence-based reading and writing, and then the high score for the second math exam that you took. And that will become your new SAT score for the admissions process. The same is true for the ACT. The ACT has 4 sections, and then the composite score. So English, reading, math, and science reasoning. We'll give you the highest score for each one of those 4 sections as part of the process, and then calculate a new composite score based on those higher multiple exam sittings. So suppose you took the ACT and you took, one time you got a 32, the next time you got a 35, and then the next time you took it again, you got a 34. We're going to average out that composite score to give you the higher score for that particular test. And so we're always giving you the benefit of the doubt after multiple sittings, giving you the best score that you receive from those various different tests that you take in. Now, the number of times you take the test, I think that that's a conversation you want to have with your guidance, college counselors, because I think it might vary from student to student. If you're applying to test optional schools, you can decide and have that conversation with your college counselor about what makes sense for the process as well.
International students, I have never heard of a school that super scores the TOEFL.
Yeah.
There might be one out there, but I doubt it. So your TOEFL is going to be the composite of your best TOEFL test.
Yeah, just to build on the test optional point, one thing I like to do is if there's a student who, and Naviance is really cool and they do this, they'll break down all of our historical applications to, say, Marist, and give us what our accepted percent was, but then they'll go into those kids that were accepted and say what the high SAT was, what the low SAT was, what the average SAT score is. But just because it's only the Trinity-Pawling sample, it's not accurate of Marist pool in general. And like Mr. Mead said, that contact with your admissions rep is really important sometimes. So that's an easy way for a kid to reach out to Marist and just ask, this is my score, should I submit it or should I not? And everyone on both sides of the table is here to help the students, and we all are counselors at the end of the day, so they're not going to hold that against you if you put in. They're going to come back and say, if it's not above this, don't submit it. I really think that would help. I don't think that would help. And I think it's a really good way just to open up the lines of communication. Are there any audience questions? Yes.
Are all the options clear on Naviance by school, or do you look at the school individually, admissions process, and figure out test optional, or
whether it's test optional?
Yeah, all the other.
I sent a list. I sent the fair test list that Chris alluded to. I sent it to you guys on Parents' Weekend. So if you go back to your old email, and I'll send it again, you can find it there, or you can find it on Naviance. It tells you if it's test optional.
And it'll also tell you.
What Naviance won't tell you, though, is what's a good number to submit if it's test optional. And I called Chris about 4 weeks ago and said, look, I got a 24 on an ACT, thumbs up, thumbs down. And he's like,
so you would have got the same response from me.
I got a 36 on our thing. Yeah, that's where the relationship comes into play. We'll help you figure out whether you should submit or not.
The other thing is, as you're visiting colleges and universities, ask. These are great conversations to have with them. And what does your test optional pool look like, and how many were accepted, and that type of thing. These are all great questions to ask when you're visiting.
And we're going to have about 140 to 150 schools come through here next fall. You're going to see these faces again, and this is your chance to ask. Your test optional, where's the cutoff?
But I think another message that's coming through is that one of the things that Chris talked about sort of in terms of the change of higher education, particularly when it comes to admissions, is that technology has really changed how admissions works, both for students applying to college, but also for admissions offices as we go through our selection process. And technology certainly has made it much more efficient for the process to take place at a much more quicker level to be able to deal with the volume of 70,000 applications that an institution might receive. But what it really has also created is this sort of muddy middle, because it has complicated the process, because you have a lot more information at hand, but not understanding how to contextualize that information, I think, is what complicates the process. And so when you can ask that question about the students who apply, say, in the past, from Trinity to Marist and say, this is what Naviance has shown me, but what does that actually tell me? Does it tell me that my chances of being admitted are good? I need to ask that question maybe to my college counselor, or maybe I have that conversation with the Marist admissions officer. It might tell you, it might give you a target, it might give you a sense, but is it going to tell you exactly what's going to happen? No, but it provides you with that context to be able to understand the process just a bit more. And I think the follow-up questions are going to be what's most important in this process, is understanding what does it mean for me as an applicant to enter this institution that I'm applying to.
Yeah, the outlying data is really important. If you go look at our BC, Boston College graph, there's a kid who got in, you'd be like, oh my God. I mean, well, he was a 320-pound offensive lineman. And quite frankly, he was in as a freshman here. I mean, they knew they wanted this guy. So you got to take the data a little bit with a grain of salt, like who are these people? If they had a hook, and you might want to discuss what a hook is. You know, if you play the French horn, these guys want to know you play the French horn. That's big. If you're an actor and you can get their school interested in you as an actor, that's a hook, or a coach is a hook. And those numbers then can be a little bit misleading when you see them just thrown on a graph.
And I will say too, I mean, Penn State is not test optional, so we require an SAT or ACT score. We are very transparent with kind of what our range is of the scores. Any time I give a presentation to students, anytime I visit a high school, we say up front, this is our middle 50% range of SAT and ACTs. And like Chris was saying, it sometimes discourages students from applying, and that's not the purpose of it at all. It's strictly just to give you guys an idea to assess your eligibility, but that's never a question you should be scared to ask, because we are completely transparent with it, and it's also not meant to discourage you if you start doing some research on Penn State specifically, and you see that it's strictly just a range, but we're transparent with it.
And this is where I think the test scores, this is where the holistic process sort of balances out much of this conversation, because test scores are a part of the process, but it's not going to be, in most cases, the driving decision maker in the process. We're also interested in knowing, more about you, more about how you go about learning, how you go about find that excitement and curiosity towards particular academic subjects that you might want to explore. Your essay might provide some of that information as well. Your teacher recommendations provide that that same type of information that we can use in the process. So the holistic process, it really is about trying to understand you overall, so that we can put into context the numbers, the quantitative information that we get as part of your application to understand more fully how you might connect with our institution.
Any other questions? Do you guys want to talk? Yes.
I have a question about test optional versus if you're going to submit a score, and if you're not, and then you're going to rely just on your GPA, right? And what if you're taking classes that are AP classes, but your school doesn't weight? How do you factor that into your decisions?
Test option. So for us, what we have done, whether you submit your test score or not, that test score, there are no points, you can call them, assigned to it. So no matter what your score is, whether it's the highest score possible or the lowest score possible, it doesn't impact you one way or the other in terms of the metrics that we use. GPA for us, we don't really care as much about the GPA because it's a raw number as what's behind it. So that's where you're talking about the rigor of the courses that a student has taken. So you may see an applicant, if you look on the scattergrams on Naviance from Marist at random schools, you may see a student that has a GPA below what our middle 50% GPA would be. But what you don't see is that that student may have taken 7 honors and 5 AP courses and really try to maximize their curriculum within the academic subject areas. So when we look at students who have applied without test scores, we are looking at the same stuff that we're looking at as a student who applied with test scores, which is the GPA, but more importantly, what's behind it. How many core academic subjects have they taken? What level? How have they performed in each subject area? Have they struggled and continued because they're intellectually just curious and they want to overcome the challenges that they face in that, or have they kind of taken the easy way out and they've gone from higher level courses to lower level courses in that subject area? So we're really looking at it from a lot of different angles, and all of this happens within the context of the high school that they attend. So the profile, the SSR that the school sends us, that's essentially the narrative about the school, what's offered, how the students perform, the distribution of where their students are within their class. These are all pieces of the puzzle that we're evaluating as we go through the process, in addition to the qualitative information that comes with it. So, for us, test scores are really a small piece of that overall puzzle.
This document that Chris alluded to is called School Profile. I like to look at it as the Rosetta Stone. Because what it does is it puts every school on an equal footing. For instance, and don't get me wrong, Pawling High School is fine, but if you're getting a 90 at Pawling High School, you're not getting a 90 at Trinity-Pawling, you're getting about an 82. Which begs the question, why wouldn't you just go to Pawling High School and get the better grade? The Rosetta Stone through the school profile tells these guys, hey, our average is an 84. And if you're seeing applications coming from next door where everybody's in the 90s, well, we don't give out 90s like that. And then we actually take each individual class and show where the grade distribution is. So if you take Tom Cairns' AP Lit, you're probably going to get an 85, 86 if you really work hard. They will see that. And if you got a 90 in Tom's class, they're going to see that and it's like, oh my God, this guy's terrific. We don't report a GPA purposely. We'll let them figure it out, because how do you weight a GPA? Vassar may weight an AP course more than you guys. Everybody can do it however they want to do it. We just give them the raw data. Here are the grades. AP classes, honor classes are regular.
Yeah, and the secondaries, the council report is also going to include a section where it tells the college what bigger your course load was. So if it was for our highly demanding, and
yeah, most demanding. There's a label that we give, and we define what allows a student to be labeled by that rigor or vigor of their class. And if you see a most demanding, that's really positive. If you see traditional, that means he's taking all the traditional classes, which may be the exact place he should be in. Okay. But we definitely want to give the college the information so they can then make a decision based on our profile, our school.
anything else? Do you guys want to talk quickly about, Mr. Mead mentioned a hook. So maybe talk about a hook other than athletics?
Yeah, sure. So we have, part of the mission of the college is to give students a global experience. And so we have a campus in Florence, Italy. And so we'll oftentimes have students that they just come across as enthusiastic about learning about the world and diving into different cultures and things like that. And if they're interested in our Florence campus, that for them can be a real hook. We also have Division I athletics, so that can be a hook. We have 10% of our students who are part of our music programs. So there's a great need for certain students who can play certain instruments or in certain positions in ensembles. We have a big theater program, so the same is true for students who have technical skills as well as those who are performers and can stand in front of an audience and sing. So there are a lot of different things within the institution that we need and have institutional priorities every year. And we're not static, right? None of our institutions are static. The institutional priorities change every year, which I think is part of the challenge on your side in trying to figure out with each school, what are they looking for? Because as those institutional priorities shift, your talent one year may not be as important as it will be the following year, and that could be your hook. A legacy, right? That could be a hook for some students. There's a lot of different things. I mean, it really runs the gamut based on the institution that you're applying to.
You have to be creative sometimes to figure out the hook. We had a young man who knew how to run the light board up here. And he applied to Bucknell, and he went out to Bucknell, and he said, you really should go visit the theater. And he did. The guy's name was Wally. He met Wally, he said, oh, we just got this new light board. And he took our guy, took a look at it, Josh. Oh my God, it's an FX417 AA. That's what we use. And Wally's like, hold on. Called the admissions office and said, I need this guy for my theater. That's a hook. That's a hook. And if you think about what you're really good at, what your passion is, you got to figure out a way to turn that into a hook. It may be reaching out to a professor who's in an area you're interested in, and when you go visit the school, you go visit the professor. The professor likes what he sees, or you're doing research with the professor, and you're working with somebody at Vassar. I mean, that's a hook. If that person calls these guys and says, we really like Fred, it's worth a lot. But you got to, it's not going to fall in your lap. You got to go get it.
But I think the other part of the message is that, as Chris mentioned, the priorities change. You know, one year it might be something, the next year it might be something different. And so I think that there are always ongoing needs. You know, we have an orchestra. We know that we want to be able to support the orchestra program at the college. So we're looking for students who can participate in the orchestra. Same thing with athletics. But what the specific need is could change in a given year. And this is, I think, what's most apt with athletics. You know, suppose we know we need a goalkeeper for the men's soccer team. That one year, that may be the priority for that coach. Year two, that may not be as big of a priority. But maybe year three, that's a bigger priority because of the fact that that student who started is now a sophomore and they want to be ready for the years ahead. So they're thinking ahead. And so as we try to anticipate what our different needs are as an institution, we're also making those changes. And so I think that this also adds to how you think about the college admissions process. There are going to be many instances when you're going to hear a decision that doesn't work in your favor. You're denied admission, you're waitlisted, you're deferred, and it may not be that you don't offer this institution everything that it wants, but it may be that these other priorities have pushed you out of the process. So it's nothing about you as an applicant. It's just what an institution happens to need during a given year, that those priorities were so much more important that maybe it pushes applicants out, who are great applicants, would do successfully well at our institution, but we only have so many students that we can admit to the college, and so we're having to make choices at some point about the total number that we can admit, and sometimes that does push students to the wait list, or it means that we defer students, and it's nothing that you did wrong. It's just that we have other priorities that was pushing the process in ways that we needed to first make decisions that would benefit the institution as opposed to having to benefit the student.
And I will say at a larger university like Penn State, the kind of finding that hook can be a little bit more difficult because it's just such a large school and it can be hard, like I said before, with 50, 60,000 applications to kind of make yourself stand out among the thousands. I mean, obviously from a Big Ten athletic standpoint, athletics is probably our biggest hook. I mean, people, like Mr. Mead was saying, people are getting recruited as freshmen, which blows my mind, but that's probably our biggest hook. But then we also have programs in our arts and architecture college, like Chris was saying, the theater, the dance. We have programs that are kind of like costume design, and out of 45,000 students on campus, that program only has about 10 students every year. So you can find that small niche in a big university, and also we need numbers to keep that program running. So that's kind of a way for you to find your entrance into Penn State or a large school if you really have a unique interest. It's a great program. I just took a tour of the whole facility, and it blew my mind that we even had that. But there's small programs like that at large universities that kind of just fly under the radar. But if you have that special interest, don't be afraid to search online for any big school. Yes, we have biology, math, so all the typical subjects, but we also have those kind of off-the-wall ones that really could find your niche and your hook that way.
This is why we went to the Senior Independent Project. I'm just being very blunt. Because if that gives you a passion, that gives you your hook. A lot of you guys remember Ira Conklin. When he sent in his Senior Independent Project movie, he not only got into Hobart, but they threw a $60,000 scholarship at him. That's a hook. The theater people said, we want this kid now. Help us use the Senior Independent Project as an ability to demonstrate a passion, something you really love. And if you know you're going to apply to XYZ school, reach out to the XYZ faculty and say, hey, look, I'm working on a project on solar cars. Help me. You're one of the experts. Create the hook.
I'm going to make another comment. I think as I sit back and sort of listen to what we're sharing and the information that Mr. Reed is adding to the conversation, I think one could sort of leave today and feel like, I really have to kind of be the best at everything. I have to find that hook. I got to write that wonderful essay that's going to want the college to pull me in. And there's a lot, that's where that sort of that anxiety comes from, that pressure comes from. And as much as we don't want you to be anxious and have to deal with that pressure, I think that we see this process as one where we're trying to find students that we think are good, fits with our campuses, but it's also a line based on these priorities that we have as a college that we're also wanting to see on our campus. And on top of that, it means that not every student is going to offer us everything that we want. And when we're dealing with volume, Penn State's 70,000 applications. How many applications? Marist receives 12,000 applications. We receive almost 8,000 applications at Vassar. And for us, it's so for every one seat that we have in the first year class, 670 seats in the first year class, we receive 14 applications for that one seat. I can choose from one student from all that applicant pool to fill one seat. I have 14 students to make that selection of. So I'm trying to find those things, those nuggets, those bits of information that help the student sort of stand out, both for the admissions process, but also having that flip side conversation of what's that impact that student's going to have on our campus? Because it's more than just about coming to the college to study a particular academic subject area. We are a residential campus. So what happens on campus is really important as well in terms of campus life, when it comes to that engagement that you have and other things that are important to you. And we're trying to balance that too. So as a result of that, the process is one where we're using all the different types of information that we can sort of garner through the process. Hooks, grades, test scores, all these things to say, here's a student that might be a student that we think is a good fit for our institution, because we're trying, and we are comparing you across those 8,000 applications, 70,000 applications, 12,000 applications. We're making choices. And sometimes those choices, again, are going to work in your favor, and sometimes they're not. And then you have the ultra-selective schools, that are admitting 5%, 8%, 9%. Those are very challenging places to get into, and they're looking for very specific things as part of the process. And again, it says nothing about you as a student or a person. It just says more about the process and how complex the process has become. And the challenging part of that is you as a student, family, and college counseling staff having to figure that out. How does this work in my favor? What I have to offer at this school, school X versus school Y versus school C. That's why you generate a list of colleges that might meet a lot of different types of interests that you have, because it allows you that flexibility, not to put all your hopes in one institution, but to kind of have those backup places to say, if I don't get into school A, I have B, C, and D to also consider, and I would be more than happy to attend that institution because it offers me what I'm looking for, both academically as well as socially.
Yeah, I think while I'm listening here, one thing I keep thinking about is my college experience, and then my sister had a completely different college experience, and my brother had a completely different college experience than either one of us, and then I'm watching and working with kids this year who I don't think I can express how important the fit for each individual is on all these different campuses. Like my college experience, I go to a Division I school essentially for athletics. Don't really look into the student life, campus life that much. Athletics don't work out, but I fall in love with the campus. And then I still ended up transferring to a school even more for athletics now at the Division III level, and amazing institution, and I would encourage anyone to go there. but it didn't fit my personality as well as the original school. And then my sister goes through like very similar to what Mr. Mead was describing, this process where she's flying all over the country, going to South Carolina, going to California, upstate New York, where we're from, and finds a school in California that she absolutely loves, and has an amazing college experience. And then my brother is like, I think a lot of the young boys in this room, and hesitant to kind of explore any options other than what his friends are looking at, and is at a school that he likes, but now realizes is a little too small, doesn't have the majors that he really wanted. And I think what Art just said, like, and what Mr. Mead said, like, explore all these different options and have, I know everyone has that dream school, but the dream school sometimes, if you're in the bottom, and Chris and Slade and I were talking about this earlier, if you're in the bottom, if you're that 8% of that highly selective institution, if you're in the bottom part of that, you're going to be in that bottom part of that class for your entire life, where you could go to a maybe less selective institution and fit in, you're a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Maybe something about that campus jives a little bit better with you, but I think whether you're talking about athletics, whether you're talking about academic programs, this campus life, where do you want to be geographically? Do you want to be in negative 20-degree weather like it is in northern New York, or do you want to be down in Miami on the beach? I think that's what I found in my short time is that kind of gets missed a lot from the student perspective.
I think to piggyback, you may see on the list a couple schools that you're going to be like, never heard of. Trust us a little bit, because what we're looking at is what's a really good fit for your son. And you may get frustrated if it's like, well, this doesn't, I've never heard of school. Check it out. There's so many schools out there that are really terrific. And I don't know what schools the parents here have heard and haven't heard of, but I can assure you there's at least 24 schools that are great fits for every kid sitting in this room. And you got to give us a little help here working with the list. Because I want you to go to school and succeed and do well and graduate, to Chris's point. Don't be a statistic because you got in over your head and it's not the right fit.
Question. Art, you had talked a little about the wait list when you described that process if someone does
You also
put on
use
a
the
wait
term
list.
defer.
Sorry. So let's talk about the two terms, defer and wait list. So typically, if a student applies early, whether it's early decision or early action, you may be deferred from the early program to the regular admissions program. So it doesn't mean that you've been denied admission to the institution. Usually it means that the school wants to look at you in the context of a different pool. And so, for example, at Vassar, we have early decision. So students who apply to the college, it may be that if you had a rocky end of junior year semester and your grades dipped a little bit, and now you're applying as a senior to the institution, we don't have a full set of grades yet, you have a quarter grade, and maybe it looks like they're on the upward trajectory, but they're not yet telling us that you kind of got back to that level at which you were. We might defer you to regular admission so that we can look at that first set of semester grades to say, where did this student end up in the courses that they were taking? And how well did they do? At that point, you might say, you know what, this is a student that we want to offer admission to, even though we deferred them from early decision to regular decision. So usually, I would say, for many institutions who offer early programs, it's a way to view your application in the context of a different group of applications applying later. Sometimes it's also a way for us to just manage volume. When we think about the number of students that we admit through early decision, we're mindful of that. You know, I have 670 places in my first year class. About 43% of the students that we enroll at Vassar come through early decision. So those are students who committed to come to the institution. but 43% is a healthy percent of that first-year class. Some institutions are at 50%, some are at 55%, some even are now at 60% of the first-year class being admitted through early decision. And so I know, though, that I have kind of this cap that I keep asking to say, you know what, I never want a first-year class that has more than 45% of the students applying early, because that really does put it at a disadvantage, students who are applying regular decision. And I know I'm going to find many students in the regular decision pool that I also want to meet, that I also want to have on campus, so why fill up my class through early decision? So I'm going to wait. So sometimes I'm hedging my bets basically and saying, I'm going to maybe defer student to see what they look like in the context of the regular pool. They have a lot to offer us, but I don't want to fill my class with early decision applicants, so I'm going to wait and maybe make a decision at a later moment. So deferring may not mean that you're going to be denied, may not mean that you're going to be admitted, but it really, again, is about an institution saying, what are my limitations in terms of what I might be able to do early decision, and how can I keep to that? And it may mean that I hold off on making a decision, sort of a yes decision on the applicant, to sort of meet the numbers from my perspective. Waitlist is when we're reviewing regular decision applications, is that, again, we're going to have many students that we like, many students that we think offer us something that is unique, that is valuable, that we see a fit with you, but we only have so many spaces that we can offer admission to, because based on the number of students who will say yes to us, historically may mean that I may have a class that's bigger or smaller than what I want. So what does that mean? So again, at Vassar, our first year class is 670 students. I know that 36, 37% of the students that we offer admission to usually say yes to us. And so the total number of offers I can admit to the college hovers around 1,800 students. That may mean that I may choose not to go over that. If I want my class to come in at exactly 670, I have a little bit of room, a wiggle room that I can work with. I can say, no, maybe I go to 1850, see what that yields for me. But it might be a year where I'm short. Maybe I do my math. I think it's going to work out perfectly. I admit 1,850 students, and I'm still short 50 students in my first year class. The wait list group of students is then that group of students that come back to you and say, we know we offered you a place on the wait list. We now know we have space in our first year class. Are you still interested in Vassar? And if you are, we're offering you admission to the institution. Let us know whether you want to come or not. Sometimes you're kind of like, yes, Vassar was my first choice school. I want to go there. I still want to go there. Sign me up. In other cases, you might say, you know what? I got into Penn State. I'm happy with Penn State. I'm going to go to Penn State. Take me off Vassar's wait list. And so we will continue to reach out to students until we get that group of that first year class that I want. So the wait list again is essentially what the name implies. You're kind of waiting for the institution to see what happens with the process. Are we up? Are we over on our yield? And then if we have space in the class, we can then begin to reach out to some of these students that we want to offer admission to. Again, we like what you had to offer, we just didn't have the capacity to do it based on what our historical yield is on the number of offers of admissions that we've made in a given year.
The wait list, usually it's pretty well done by middle to end of June, but it can linger. And if you're seriously on a wait list, a couple things, you got to read your email, because there'll be somebody on notes saying, do you want to stay on our wait list? And if you say yes, then you're now going to go to a smaller wait list, or a smaller wait list. And there are instances where people have been moving into their dorm and get a phone call saying, hey, we got a spot, you want it? Pack up the dorm, and you're on the wait list and go. That has happened. So the wait list, you got to be very attentive as a student when you're on a wait list.
And I guess I would also offer that follow through on those schools that offer you a place on the wait list if you're truly interested in them. If you know that you're not interested in them,
don't waste time.
Don't waste it. Don't waste our time, your time, because that means that there are other students that could benefit from that space. And you might say, you know what? There are 2 schools, or maybe there are 3 schools that put me on the wait list that I would be really interested in pursuing, and maybe those are the three, the two, the one that you decide to follow through with to see, let me see what happens. And if it works out, great. If not, I'm perfectly happy with the institution that I decide to go to.
Be careful too with the waitlist. There's a psychological thing in your mind. You will think because you got waitlisted that it's a better school than the one you actually got into. Not necessarily the truth. And I've seen my daughter take a waitlist spot, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And it was. She figured, oh, if they didn't take me originally, it must be better than the school that took me originally. And she was miserable at that school. And the first school would have, in my opinion, it was the right fit. So it's sort of like the girl who won't dance with you at the dance. And then she says yes, and you abandon your date. Well, maybe one dance, and then you're like, wow, what did I just abandon? Think it through. It's not necessarily a better school. It's a different option.
Mackenzie, do you want to quickly talk about rolling admission?
Yeah. So Penn State is rolling admission. We don't do early decision or early action. And what rolling admission is we're kind of always accepting applications. So at least the way Penn State works is we do have a priority deadline of when we want you to send your application, and that makes it our academic criteria to be accepted is the least competitive then, and the later you wait to apply, it gets more and more competitive. But rolling admission, the concept as a whole, is we accept applications on a rolling basis. There's never a time where if you want to apply for fall 2018 where we say you have to apply by X. You could really apply to us in July and try to start that August. Your chances of getting accepted to your desired program might not be as high as they would be if you applied earlier. But that is rolling admission. There's no end term to when you can apply. Like I said with Penn State, at least, so the earlier you apply, the better your chances are of being accepted. Because obviously with rolling admission, our spots do fill because we're rolling out decisions as well. And then obviously the later you apply, the more spots that are already going to be filled. So it's kind of, if you're dead set on a school that is rolling admission, that doesn't mean you should wait until the very last second to send your application, because at least in Penn State's case, the longer you wait, the less likely you are to get accepted to your desired program and campus. I don't know if either of you have anything to add with that.
If you know your school's Penn State, get it in immediately. And here's the other reason why. You get accepted, Penn State's a big place. They start the process of signing up for classes a year early. And if you wait and apply on the last possible day and you get in, your classes are going to be full at Penn State. So you get a rolling school, you fall in love with it, do it. You just take it, if it's the right fit, and get into the system as quickly as possible.
I spoke with many students this cycle, and we do have our priority deadline is November 30th, so that's obviously later than a lot of the early decision and early actions. And so a lot of students at Penn State was their #1 school. They just kind of put on the back burner because they knew our soft deadline was later, and November 30th comes like that. And students were scrambling, and then when you're high stressed, you feel pressured, you're hurrying to get an application in, you typically don't put your best work on the application. So like Mr. Mead said, you don't want to wait until the very last minute. Get it off your shoulders, check it off, breathe a sigh of relief, and then move on to your other applications.
What's the earliest somebody could apply to Penn State?
So our application becomes available September 1st. And then we do accept them until anytime. So then you really have it September 1st between November 30th, and we really suggest students to apply by then. So you have quite the span of time to get it in. And any time within that range, you're going to be in that same academic criteria. So if you apply September 1st, or if you apply November 10th, our academic criteria to be accepted doesn't change. But once again, I mean, our systems get busy, you guys get stressed, life happens. And so September 1st, school's just started, you've got a lot of time. Once again, just
so if you submit an application on September 1st, at what point in that timeline do you make a decision, and do you inform students right away? How does that work?
Yeah, so we don't really start looking at applications until the beginning or middle of November, strictly because we need to have enough applicants to have our base of where we are numbers-wise, personal statement, all of the essay, all of that stuff. And a lot of times students don't apply in September. They typically wait until October, November, so we don't have enough data to get our academic criteria to start admitting students. If you do apply by the end of November, so November 30th, Penn State guarantees that you'll hear a decision by January 31st. But
a lot of rolling schools, though, especially Common App rolling schools, Common App opens August 1st. And this year we have somebody in the senior class who finished his application on August 2nd, submitted, got into his first choice before he got here to school. And that's a nice way to go through your senior year. It takes a little pressure off. So it is possible. If you're on top of your game and your #1 school has rolling, get it going.
But we also had a kid who went through that exact process and then didn't tell either one of us that he had applied, so we were in the dark that we needed to send out his transcript to this particular school and send out his teacher recs and send out his SSR, and I think, if I recall correctly, there was one teacher rec that we actually had to chase down because the teacher didn't know. The teachers all have access to the Naviance system, and that's how they upload their recommendation. So the teacher didn't even know that this was due ASAP. So please, if you do that and make your life easier and our life easier, make our life really, really easy and let us know. And Naviance will be able to show all the kids that, but Naviance has these cool little check boxes that say when you're applying, and after that they have these cool little check boxes that say, I have applied. We have a little under 5 minutes left, so are there any other burning questions?
Interviews, informative versus substantive. Why don't you explain the difference? Penn State, that's not in the cards.
Probably wouldn't be a good one to answer that.
You just came this morning from your 81,000.
Yeah.
But how do you use an interview, whether it's an alumni interview or an admissions person, or is it a student interview? And this is really important for the parents because it's changed since our day, big time.
So we offer informational interviews, and you can do that with an alum, or you can do that with a current student who's part of our ambassador program. And so there's some of our kind of like top leaders on campus who work with the admission office. And that's an opportunity for you to, A, visit, if you haven't already, and come into the admission office, but also to have really the perspective of a current student who's living and breathing the experience that you're considering, to help you get a better understanding of what the opportunities will be and what that experience is like. So for us, it's a great way for students to really come and engage with the campus without having to directly talk to us, because as friendly as we are, we realize that when we sit down across from a student at a table, their hands start tapping, their knees start going up and down, and you know, some of them have difficulty thinking and putting their thoughts together. So it's a little bit of an easier approach for a student as well. But we are also available. We, as a staff, do not conduct interviews, but we will sit down with a student and answer questions with them and a parent if we're available to do that. That interview, the student ambassador has an opportunity to provide notes to the admission committee. I will tell you that 9 times out of 10, those notes really don't impact our decision whatsoever. But occasionally we'll find something about a student that we'll then dig deeper and learn more about them and realize something that maybe wasn't as evident as we went through their application or their essay. But we don't have, you know, the interview where they sit down and they score all the answers that you gave or anything like that. It's much more of an informational sit down with the student one-on-one.
And so that's very similar. So let me describe a case where at a prior institution I was at, we did have evaluative interviews. And the evaluative interview would play a part in the process. And whether that interview took place with somebody at the college, so a student interviewer, an admissions officer, Then we had also offered alumni interviews, and each one of them was evaluated. And so basically, we would ask you a set of questions. We would hear your responses to those questions. Once the interview was over, we would go back to our office, our laptop, computer, whatever, and then essentially write an evaluation of that conversation. What was discussed? How did you respond to the questions that were being asked of you? Were you pretty thorough? Were you pretty self-reflective? Did you spend time to really articulate those ideas that were important to you and what you wanted to convey to the admissions committee? Were there things that, or maybe we asked you about you that you weren't sure were going to be in your application, or maybe you didn't think were a big deal, and then you made a comment about something, and then we start asking you more questions about that? Because sometimes we will learn things through the interview that we don't learn in the application that actually might provide even greater context for understanding your particular situation. So an evaluative interview really is, the frame is to get a sense of you as a student, you as a person, how you fit with our institution, how you might impact the type of place that we are. When we think about the types of institutions that we are, how do you fit within that framework? If we're a small seminar-based institution and we know that our average classes are 10 or 12 or 15, we want to know, when you're in that class, are you going to be somebody who's really discussing ideas, really putting out there your perspective, your opinion on the things that you're covering in class? If you're somebody who comes to class and isn't going to be that person, we might say, is this person a good fit for us? Because we're expecting that students are going to be actively engaged in that small classroom discussion. And so that interview, that evaluative interview, might provide some of that insight that we're not necessarily getting through the application in full detail, but it might be shared through that one-on-one conversation for 30 to 45 minutes and learning a little bit more about you. That just provides a little bit more meat that we can work with through the application process. So an evaluative interview, it really is about asking that question, what else can we add to the student's application that maybe we're not finding in the rest of the application? So think about the evaluative interview as a way to, in some ways to show off, to talk about you in very positive ways, to talk about sort of your highlights of your high school experience, about things that you're looking for in college that's going to resonate and connect with the type of institution that you're applying to. But ask yourself the question, though, should I have this interview? Sometimes it works in your favor. If you're somebody who easily can converse with somebody, have a conversation, really talk about a variety of different things, that interview could work in your favor. If you're somebody who's a bit more quieter, it's a bit more nervous, isn't able to really articulate your ideas, when you're in that one-on-one situation, you might ask yourself, is this going to benefit me or not? But it all depends on what the school's recommending. Some schools recommend an interview. Some schools might make it a requirement as part of the process. So see what the expectation is and decide, did this work in my favor or not in having an evaluative interview with this particular school that I'm interested in.
And Naviance tells you whether a school requires it or recommends it, or sometimes says we don't even offer it.
I guess our last point, I would say that I want to browse over it quickly because we're kind of out of time, but it's also a really important point. Can you guys just talk about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the importance of appropriate social media presence in this day and age?
Every time I have a question like this come up, there's a story that came out, probably going back 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years now, where an admission officer at an institution had shared information on their Facebook page that they had read in a student's application. And that information made it back to their director, and they were swiftly let go and fired from that institution because they violated policy and shared confidential information. So for us, we look at it in 2 ways. One is that we are responsible for the information that you give us, and we have a duty to protect that information and keep it confidential and not share it. And that's something that every year is reiterated in many admission offices as a reminder for staff. On the student side, I think you have to realize that information we put out there is fair game. And so we're not in a position at Marist with 8 admission officers and 12,000 applications to read and events like this to go to. We're not in a position that we can look up everybody's Facebook page or the URL for their website that they shared. But if you share information with us, it could find its way to us. I mean, we've had instances where other parents have forwarded screenshots of things that students have done or said on their Facebook pages or Twitter accounts. And for some students, it has absolutely impacted the decision that we made. And what we'll do is we will bring the student to campus, interview them, and get their take before we make any decision, especially if it's a situation that needs to be addressed quickly. And it has absolutely, for a small number of students, impacted the outcome for them in the process. So, you need to be really careful with what you're putting out there, because it's not just the college admission process. I know recent graduates from some colleges and universities out there who have lost their professional positions because of things they did in high school and things they did in college. So, once that information's out there, it's very hard to get it back. There are colleges and universities that are out there that are trying to figure out a way to kind of weave in some of these things into their admission decisions based on how many times you like the college or you post on their page or things like that. I don't know of any colleges that are out there that are actively searching the pages of every applicant that they receive to check for things. We just frankly, at least on our side, we just don't have the time to do that. But it's important. You're stepping into the real world, and these are decisions that you're making and you're choosing to put these things out there. And once you do that, the consequences can come back and bite you if you do things that you're not supposed to do. So just be careful with that.
Yeah, I will completely reiterate everything that Chris just said. I am not that much older than all of you students, so I grew up with that too, having social media and having that impact me when I was applying to schools, when I was looking for internships, when I was looking for jobs. So, I know it's easy to just kind of zone parents out. I was totally one of you. That's who I was too. But it's real. I had friends that were applying to companies and they asked for their passwords to their Instagram, their Twitter, their Facebook. So you might have things privated, but companies will ask for your password and they can search through it. And it was a class, I think it might have been my sophomore year at Penn State. I had a professor that said, very first day, professors have rosters. I was in a class of 300 people, but he had a roster with all of our names. And my major was public relations, so it was a communications class. And he said, I am going to go through all your Facebook, so either private or delete the things you don't want, and if you don't, I will post the most embarrassing picture I can find. And that was not bluffing, he really did it. And it's a tough lesson to learn for those students that didn't do it, but it goes to show you that they really can. If you put something up there that you regret or might not have been your finest moment, it's, like Chris said, it's out there and it's kind of going to always be out there. So it's not just parents or teachers or college counselors trying to nag you until you disagree with them. It's really real and they don't want to see your future get ruined or damaged just because of one silly thing you posted. So I totally understand where you are, and I think our generation has an extra thing to kind of worry about now that your parents didn't, my parents didn't, even maybe your older cousins didn't. So definitely something that is real, and it's not just parents being annoying.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a little inappropriate if texting starts going back and forth between the student and the college rep. I don't want to put you on the spot, Mackenzie, but you're 5 years older than these guys. You got to be very careful, gentlemen. All three of these people, this is a very professional relationship that you're going into. Don't assume if you send Chris Doyle a note that he's the only one who's going to read that note. It's going into your file. So you want to avoid the real casual, the hey. It's a business relationship. And if you feel that it's gotten to be a non-business relationship, maybe you're feeling uncomfortable, come talk to Mr. Hart and me, because that will happen. Because people are people and they can get very relaxed after a lot of communication, but there's really a fine line here.
The other thing is, there are obviously pitfalls to social media, but there are enormous advantages for you. You can learn so much about the college and the university and the type of campus that they have and the programs that they offer. And one of the most difficult things to figure out about any college or university, I think, is the culture at that school. Right? It's really difficult from a website or a book to really understand the culture. But to be able to go to their YouTube page and watch videos and hear directly from their students, I mean, you can really, without leaving your room, start to now figure out, I can see myself at Vassar, or I can see myself at Penn State. And that's a huge, I think, advantage for students. So, take advantage of those official Facebook, Twitter, YouTube channels that are out there, and also look around and see what else is out there that maybe current students are putting out there. You'll definitely find, the keg party in the parking lot, right? I mean, every college is going to have that. But you're also going to find the student who's doing research that's, sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, and they just came back from this amazing conference from overseas, and they're working with these faculty who are doing these incredible things. So there are really just enormous advantages to the amount of information that's out there. But again, contextualize it, right? And bounce off things that you see from the resources that are available to you to help you understand, is that reflective of the institution, or is that kind of a one-off?
And just one more sort of, word of caution, is that it's not only about what we might see prior to applying to the institution, but in the last year, there have been many instances where social media has played a part in students being having the offer of admission rescinded because of actions that have taken place through Facebook groups and stuff like that, where they making new comments along racial lines, along gender lines, and that costs students a place at an institution because of that. So just because you're in doesn't mean that means everything that you do afterwards is okay. Institutions, if they get wind of it and ask that question, is this, does this follow our community norms as an institution? They may say it doesn't and may choose to rescind your offer of admission. So just be careful. It's not just a one-time thing. It's sort of over time. And then when you arrive on campus, it can still continue to be a factor, an issue that comes into play. So just be careful on what you're posting, what you're saying, because how it's interpreted is going to be taken differently by different individuals, and you want to just make sure that you're in a situation where you're not kind of caught between making a bad decision at some moment, and you're losing these opportunities because of that.
Well, I wish to thank the three of you. You've got the small liberal arts, you've got a great big public school, you have a mid-sized school. It's a really nice array. There are a lot of schools out there, gentlemen, and I can see from Mr. Hart, starting tomorrow, we're looking forward to start putting your list together and start the process anew. In your packet is a really fun document, easy reading, sort of a John Grisham. This is thick stuff. I'll just be blunt. This is a lot of answers to questions you may have, a lot of stuff you probably haven't even thought about is in this document. Please feel free to reach out to Mr. Hart for me if you've got more questions. But we're going to have a good year. I'm not just saying this to be nice, but this is a very good class. This class of 2019 is a really strong class, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys, both parents and the kids. So starting tomorrow, let's get this kicked off and get you guys into colleges. So thank you for your day today.
Thank you.
They all posted pictures. I was probably to get some money. What's that?
Hi, child. What?
What's that? No.
Yeah, you can. No. Can I just actually put on my vest and get warm before? Well, then I'm going to walk. Are you going to?